Now, in a significant development, U.S. Secretary of State and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov had agreed to meet in Reykjavik in Iceland on May 20th. The moment will be rare as it's the first face-to-face meeting between a Biden cabinet official and their Russian counterpart. Now, the leaders agreed to hold separate talks on the sidelines of the ministerial meeting of the Arctic Council. Blinken and Lavrov spoke on the phone about an array of international issues and bilateral ties which will be discussed. They discussed North Korea, Iran nuclear deal, strategic stability as well as cooperation within the Arctic Council. Now, the high-level meeting could touch upon several high-profile topics, including Russia's expanded military presence along its border with the Ukraine and Navalny issue. Now, their meeting in Reykjavik comes ahead of a potential summit between President Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin, which the White House has indicated could happen next month. This as the two also discussed Washington's proposal to organize a summit between U.S. President Joe Biden and Russian President Vladimir Putin. All eyes are now on the key Blinken-Lavrov meeting as tensions escalate between Russia and the United States. Now, the United States imposed a sweeping set of sanctions and diplomatic expulsions in response to Russia's alleged SolarWinds cyber attack and interference in the U.S. elections and ongoing occupation of Crimea. Russia responded with its own set of sanctions, diplomatic expulsions and restrictions on the U.S. embassy in Moscow. And for more on this, WION correspondent Daria Bondarchuk is now joining us live from Moscow. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, amid an escalation in U.S.-Russia tensions, Lavrov and Blinken will meet on the sidelines of the Arctic Council. This is going to be the first face-to-face meeting between the Biden cabinet and the Russian administration. What can they achieve?
Well, indeed, this will be a very important first step on a possible further dialogue that Moscow and Washington could reinitiate since the last period of cool down and escalation of diplomatic tensions between Moscow and Washington, an escalation in hostile rhetoric from both sides, and the expulsion of diplomats and a further similar unfriendly moves, as Moscow called, from Washington, for which Moscow has retaliated and taken and promised to take tit-for-tat retaliation and asymmetrical responses if the collective West takes any further unfriendly steps or crosses some red lines that the Kremlin had previously said that it will itself unilaterally established. So what we see now is sort of a scale down from that tension and an attempt and a hope for resumption of dialogue that Washington and Moscow used to be able to continue despite tensions in bilateral relations and generally global unstable situation in many areas, including during conflicts, open conflicts, military standoffs and conflicts such as in Syria and over Ukraine. The two sides have been able to continue dialogue, and Kremlin has suggested that previously that there could be some wave of discussion bilateral. Moscow is interested in discussing bilateral issues of mutual interest, including global stability, including the nuclear situation, the situation with the nuclear tensions over the Korean Peninsula, and generally, Washington has, in its turn, has signaled that it will not give in sort of to pressure and will respond to Russian aggression. But this seems to be so far a rhetoric showing both sides are standing firmly on their positions. But at the same time, this possible meeting between Lavrov and Blinken planned for next week could indeed pave a way and pave lay groundwork for possible future meeting between Biden and Putin.
Absolutely.
Somewhere in a third country, possibly in Europe.
Right. I was just going to come to that this meeting comes ahead of a potential summit between U.S. President Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin. Now, can we hope to see any developments on that front?
Well, there are a lot of disagreements between Moscow and Washington, and like I've described, there is somewhat a negative background to that meeting. And what we could possibly see, given that Moscow has sort of rolled back the troops deployment that has raised concerns over the near to the Ukrainian border, that has raised concern and some harsh response from Washington. Also, we've seen some sort of mild treatment of an opposition leader, Alexei Navalny, who is in prison and whose fate has raised also concerns, voiced concerns from the European Union and Washington alike. We've seen that opposition leader being transferred first to a prison hospital, then to a civilian hospital, and generally Moscow has taken a sort of softer stance on the protesters that have followed that movement and the situation around the hunger strike that the opposition leader Alexei Navalny was in, and now that's been over, and there's sort of a de-escalation in that area as well. So we've seen some sort of preemptive de-escalation steps on the side of Moscow in preparation to this meeting and possible summit between the Russian and the American presidents later in summer in somewhere in a third country, possibly in Europe.
All right. Daria, thank you so much for joining us with all those inputs on that. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.